I'm J.E. Wilds, a hunting guide that lives down in the pristine landscapes of New Zealand. Join my team and I on our dream hunts as we hunt the wild places our wilderness has to offer. Welcome to the J.E. Wilds podcast. Alright guys, okay, so I'm going to get into this straight away. Right now I'm sitting in my tent, I'm drinking a coffee. It is, what is the time? 9:42am and I'm pretty gutted to be honest. I've been up since 6 o'clock, but we've got low cloud, like I'm fully fogged in. So to paint a picture, my tent, my camp at about 1,300 meters elevation. So I'm near the top of the mountain and I'm perched up just off the edge of a ridge on a nice little flat bench, just big enough for my tent. The tent I'm sitting in is my Access 2, my MSR Access 2. I've got all my gear spread around me, cameras, everything, and I've got a stag roaring, man. I've got a stag roaring across the valley right now, like I literally heard him 2 minutes ago when I was setting this podcast up. He's been roaring all morning. But first, let me back up. So right now, I'm in the wilderness, I'm in my tent, and it is a very foggy, low cloud day. Visibility is about 40 meters, literally 40 meters. I can't see bugger all. So let me back up. How did I get here? Because so far this has been a pretty freaking cool hunt. Very frustrating, but very cool. So, okay, I ended up heading up to Christchurch after my last big trip. I don't know if you've heard the podcast about that hunt yet, but it will be on its way, I'm sure, because that hunt was basically the hunt of my life. It was unreal. So I went up to Christchurch. I caught up with Rachel and Ryan for dinner. Rachel's helping me with my social media and stuff like that while I'm in the mountains. She's doing posting and getting images and things like that organised, so she's keeping on top of all that, which has been amazing. And I ended up going over to Scott's place. So Scott and Caroline, you would have heard me talk about Scott before. Scott and Caroline, their business is Heli Rural. So you've heard me talk about it. I've flown with Scott for years now, good mates of mine. And the plan was I'm going to head into the hills with Scott, get up in the mountains and hopefully get into some big stags. It is the roar, they're roaring. It is April. Yeah, there's some good action to be had. So, okay, it's a little bit annoying. So I was waiting on a package. A courier was bringing over a package. It's actually from one of my sponsors, Real Meals. And it was a whole lot of food for the next couple of trips. So I was waiting for that to arrive, and it was due to be here on Friday. I was meant to fly in on Saturday or Sunday, but the package did not arrive, man. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm just helping Scott. Like I'm literally flying around with Scott. We're picking up hunters out of the hills. I'm giving them a hand. Yeah, a little side to that is actually really cool to meet a lot of you guys. I mean, some of you guys listening to this, I probably met you on that day. Basically everyone we pulled out of the mountains and everyone we flew in was a big fan of my show and a big fan of what I'm doing, so it was really cool to meet you guys and shake your hand and hear your stories about how you're getting on. Some stags were coming out of the mountains. There was one real nice big 14 that came out from some boys up north. They came down for their first mountain trip with Scott. He put them into a place where they got into a whole lot of animals, including a freaking monster, big 14. So yeah, that was real cool to meet you guys. So if you're listening to this, shout out to you fellas, man. And everyone else I met over that last couple of days. So I was basically helicopter boy. I was there helping Scott unload, helping Scott pick up, and yeah, we did a lot of flying, and we actually got to see a lot of animals from the air too while we're picking up people and stuff like that. But anyway, come Sunday, I couldn't make my flying, so Monday morning I called up the guys and got them to track and trace the package, and it was saying it was delivered, but it wasn't delivered. So what that meant is, can you hear that wind? It is freaking blowing a gale up here. I've got my door open in my tent and I can see a little bit out there at the moment. The clouds are lifting a little bit, but still not enough. Anyway, so I got them to check where this package was that we were waiting on, because I was only waiting for that package. That was the only thing that was stopping me from going in the mountains. When they say it was delivered first, on the track and trace it was saying it was delivered, but it was just delivered to a courier who was then going to take it to the final address. Weird, I know, but that's just how they did it for some reason. It was saying it was meant to be officially delivered. I had to call up the courier company and figure it all out, but officially delivered that evening, Monday evening. So long story short, the package arrived. I loaded all my stuff, packed all my gear, and Tuesday morning I was due to fly in, so I'm all ready to go. I ended up meeting Scott at a road end a long way up one of the big river valleys here in Canterbury, and as he was picking up some other hunters, he stopped in, grabbed me, and then we flew deep into the mountains, probably the deepest I've ever been, to be honest. We're a long way in. We're in a valley that I've wanted to hunt for a long time. We're in there, like a head basin of a side creek. So we've got a leading spur that's sort of running off the top of the mountain, and when I was scouting out where I was going to go, this leading spur looked like I could land on it. Like, looked like we could get a helicopter to land up there and potentially find a spot to camp. So that was our sort of target. Once we got up in here, the cloud was getting pretty sketchy. Like, it was fairly low, but it was... Hopefully you guys can hear me over that wind. That wind is pummeling at the moment. Yeah, so we managed to get the helicopter in just under the cloud, because obviously you're not allowed to fly in the cloud, it's dangerous. So we managed to get in there just under the cloud, perch up, unload all my gear, and then Scott and one of his right-hand man, Simon, they flew off out of there, and then basically within 5 to 10 minutes the cloud just enveloped me. I couldn't see anything, so we just made it in time, which was pretty freaking cool. Yeah, so I'm sitting on this ridge. There's not that many options for camp. There's a pretty hefty wind coming in, there's low cloud. I've got one little bench just on the sheltered side of the ridge, which is perfect. So what I ended up doing is I set up my Access 2. I've got 3 tents here with me, just ready for fly camping missions. The tent that was going to be suitable for this situation was my Access 2. It's designed for heavy elements, you know, strong winds, things like that. It doesn't take up much room, being a 2-person. So I ended up perching that, and it fitted on this little bench perfectly, man. So perfectly. You'll see it in the video. It's like any bigger and it wouldn't have fitted. And I ended up hammering the pegs in with rocks, so the pegs are super solid, so that no matter how much wind I get, I should be sweet. I set up camp here, got comfortable. Yeah, basically that cloud did not lift at all. Did not lift one bit. So it started drizzling, so I was forced to head into my tent, basically stay dry, stay comfortable. And it drizzled, it rained, the cloud hung around right through till dark, which was not a great first day, to be honest. Very slow, not much going on, but I just wanted to know what was around me, because, you know, it was so cloudy I couldn't even see what was around me, which is a weird feeling. You know you're in this amazing mountainous environment, amazing valley, but you can't see. At that time I was probably seeing around 50 to 70 meters visibility, so I couldn't see bugger all anyway. But it gets exciting. So as I'm laying here in my tent, it was probably like 5 p.m, you know, it's sort of starting to become evening. I heard a stag roar, just a real quiet moan, but across the valley from me, probably not that far from me. Every 5 minutes he started roaring. It started off slow, like the moans, but then as it got more and more into it, he was full on roaring, bellowing, just massive deep growls. I was thinking, oh, far out, this is epic. Sounded very dominant. Sounded like he was keeping satellite stags at bay just by the noises he was making, and he wasn't all that far away. So the next morning I was very excited to get up early. I'd probably see the stag from camp, so that was what I was thinking. So I went to sleep that night very excited, and listening to the drizzle, listening to the rain, and my alarm went off at 5:30 the next morning. It was dark for ages, it was way too early, so I basically got up, sort of mucked around in the darkness. And then the annoying thing is, the cloud was still super thick. I couldn't see anything. So eventually, as the morning sort of crept on, and I'm hearing roars too, by the way. I'm hearing roars in the cloud across the valley. So there's stags. The stags are still going. I can hear 4 stags roaring. I can hear the real dominant one from the night before. I can hear another one near him, and then there's 2 more down the valley further. Just have a sip of coffee 1 second. So we got these stags roaring, but I can't see them through the cloud. So what I did is I packed up all my gear, hunting gear, and I headed in the direction of the real dominant sounding stag, and I dropped elevation quite a bit to try and get under the cloud, but unfortunately that cloud was pretty thick right through. I sat down, I ended up just sitting still and waiting, and eventually the cloud lifted enough for me to see across the valley. I got a glimpse of a young stag, like maybe a 2-year-old stag raking a bush, just going hard, just beating a small patch of scrub up. which was pretty cool. I only saw him for literally 2 minutes. Got the binos, got the spotting scope on him and then the cloud covered him up again. Still can't see the big stag roaring. Well, what I think is a big stag. I can hear him, still can't see him. He's just tucked up in the cloud. Yeah, I'm basically just sitting there glassing around. Further down the valley, I spot a couple of hinds way up on a face and then a young stag moving around with them, but I'm not seeing any of the stags that are roaring. This younger stag, he doesn't look rutty at all. He's not puffed up. He wasn't one of the stags I was looking for, I should say, but at least I can see something now, and it's probably a kilometre across the valley, and I'm looking into some real gnarly sort of west coast looking faces, big sharp fingers coming down into scrub, tussock benches above them, and real gnarly looking face, but really good face for animals. Lots of cover and lots of spots for things to hide. So yeah, pretty cool to be able to see the country finally. I ended up doing like a little circuit around. I cut down below camp, went down the valley. I just tried to open up some more country, but I didn't really see anything else, and it started getting sort of like late morning. The stags had stopped roaring. I ended up sneaking back up to camp and having a coffee and having some breakfast, because at this stage I was getting pretty hungry and I was getting pretty keen on a coffee. So I'm sitting at camp having my breakfast, having my coffee, thinking like, what am I going to do for this evening? Hopefully that cloud lifts enough for me to get eyes on this real dominant sounding stag across the valley, because I really wanted to see him. He just had that particular sound to him that he's going to be something worth looking at. So the afternoon sort of rolls around and I'm like getting all my gear ready. I think I even start like moving away from camp, but then the cloud just literally drops. Within minutes it drops, fully fogged in, fully clouded, and cannot see anything. It starts raining again. Moral of the story is I'm back at camp early and I'm in my tent sheltering from the rain and the storm that's sort of moving through. Strong winds, visibility nothing, and I'm just trying to stay dry. So I ended up cooking a meal, having dinner, and just chilling out that night. And yeah, haven't heard any roars at all afternoon since the morning. So I'm kind of wondering like what's going on, like where are the stags? There's 4 of them going, but I can't hear anything in between wind gusts that is. Yeah, it wasn't until like literally just on dark, and I still can't see anything outside, but the light's really fading. I start hearing some stags roaring again, so they basically waited till right on dark before they started roaring. Yeah, that was basically my night, man. So another pretty unproductive day, to be honest. I think that's like generally like a big risk when you're at the higher elevation sort of locations, that you're at the mercy of that low cloud. And I've got a northwest wind which generally brings that cloud, a northwest wind pushing through, that's basically pulling all that cloud through these sort of head basins, through these higher valleys. But it's just the nature of the game. Like where I am, it's really tucked out of the way. I can't imagine many guys come up in here at all, and I've never been up in here, but you're at the risk of these sort of elemental issues which don't make it fun, man. When you're trying to hunt. And I mean, I've got plenty of days ahead of me. I don't even have a return, to be honest. I've got enough food to be up here for 2 weeks or more, so I can be here as long as I need to. I've got solar panels, not that they'd help me at the moment, but I've got lots of batteries, lots of charge, power banks and stuff like that, so all the BioLite stuff that I normally run. I've actually got that big BioLite base charge, which is 166 watt hours or something. Don't quote me on that. Look up BioLite base charge 600. I'm pretty sure it's a 600 model, and it's a big unit. It's got like outlets of all sorts, USBs you can plug in. I reckon you could run a boot dryer. I reckon you could almost run like a microwave off it. That's how good it is. That big cyclone that hit New Zealand last year, 23 I think it was, we had our fridge and our freezer running off this thing, so it can handle it. Anyway, so I've got that with me and the solar panel to match. Basically a lot of power if I need to charge things. I could be in here a long time, so time is not really slim for me, but it still doesn't help when you can't actually hunt. So that night I ended up having a pretty good sleep, and yeah, listening to the stags throughout the night. They were just piping off every now and again. The big dominant one across the valley, he was going hard out like crazy. Huge big grunty throaty roars, the ones you want to hear, put it that way. No half pipe moan, this was like proper. So come the next morning, same deal, get up early, a little bit later this time, just due to the fact the day before was probably a little excessive. I get up, have a coffee. Oh no, before I could even get a coffee, man, like it's just coming light and I can see the whole valley. There's no cloud. I'm like, yes, here we go, this is epic. The stags are just going nuts. So I get the binos up and I'm like looking. I can't see the stag. Like, took me a little while to pick him out, but turns out he was really high, like higher than me, across the valley, up on this tussocky, basically the top of the mountain. And there was 2 hinds, and there was a stag chasing them around, and there was a satellite stag like circling them. They ended up going to the top of the mountain, the very, very top, skylining themselves. This is when I get the big camera on them, and the first stag I see is a young stag, the satellite stag, but then all of a sudden I see the dominant one, the one that's making all the roaring over the last couple of days, the big grunty one. And he's a freaking giant, man. He is a monster stag. Long, real good master, and I think I can count. He's perfectly skylined, so you can see the points really well through the spotting scope and stuff like that. In the video, you'll see what I could see, because I've got some cool footage of that. So I think I count 4 on one top, 3 on the other. Brow bay tray on both antlers, so what's that, big 13. But the thing is, he's got really good width, he's got really good length, and he's got huge thick timber, like proper stag, a big stag, probably one of the biggest public land stags I've ever seen, if not the biggest. So this is the one that's making all the roaring, most of the noise, this is the big grunty dominant one, and he did not disappoint. He's a freaking tank. So we're going to call him the giant, okay, throughout the rest of this podcast. So when I say that, you know who I'm talking about. The big dominant grunty one is now called the giant. We're calling him the giant. I think I'll start calling him the giant in the video as well. So I'm watching the giant, I'm watching him through the spotter, I'm filming him. I'm just trying to see where he's going to go, because if I make a move from camp, I'm basically walking across an open face, and the open face is directly opposite him, and he will see me easy. If he looks down, he'll see me easy. His hinds will see me. So my plan was to let them basically feed into a gully, feed out of sight, and bed down for that mid-morning. And I was waiting for that to make my move, because where he was, he looked pretty happy up there. He's been there for this is day number 3, and his roars have come from up there the previous 2 days. So it seems like he's pretty happy up there. I'm not too worried that he's going to go too far, but I need to be able to approach safely, because I fear if I spook him or he sees me, that's it. These big old stags, you don't get a second chance of them. If you give yourself away, if you ruin the stalk or something like that, that's quite often the last chance you'll get at one. So I definitely didn't want to make a mistake on this guy. So as it was, his hind, and it looked like her fawn. It actually looked a little bit older than fawn, maybe a yearling, maybe her fawn from the year before. But anyway, 2 hinds, they started moving across the face, and they went around the corner into like another head valley that's up there, that's just tucked out of my sight. I can't see it. So they dropped in there, and he followed them. He went up there as well, disappeared out of sight. So now's my chance. I've got all my gear ready already, so I chucked it on my back, and I started making my way out to the left to get to the head of the valley, and then cross the valley to get onto his side, and then start making my way up the leading ridge that will end up right on top of, or basically right where he was. As I'm leaving camp, I'm probably 150 metres from camp on my side in the sun, and it's still clear as day. I shouldn't say clear as day, it is day. It's still clear, there's no cloud, I can see everything. But on my side of the valley, I catch a bit of movement, probably 400 metres ahead, maybe a touch over, and I pull the binos up, and here's 2 spikers. I couldn't tell if they were young stags or spikers, but anyway. So I managed to set the camera up and have a look, and yeah, sure enough, 2 spikers. One of them, his body characteristics, his body shape, he looked like a tank. He had big shoulders, he had a big neck, big chest, if he had no antlers, you'd think he was a lot older than what he was. So they started coming towards me, feeding towards me, and they ended up coming right towards me. So they got closer and closer, and it ended up getting too close. I couldn't film them with the big camera on the long lens. So I picked up my other camera, which has got a 24-70 f2.8 lens, if anyone's wondering. And I'm filming them with that, and they're 10 metres away. They walk right below me, they look up at me. I'm pretty camouflaged in the tussock, so they're looking at me. Oh, there's a roar. He's just roared across the valley now. Don't know if you guys would have heard that, but the giant, that is. So yeah, I'm filming these guys, and they're 10 metres away. They look at me, but they didn't seem too bothered, and they just kept walking past me and get out behind me, and then eventually they catch my wind and they take off. So that was crazy. I carry on. I end up going to where I first saw them, down in the saddle, and then I'm preparing to climb up the other side of the valley, get on that leading ridge to get up to where the giant is. At this stage I haven't seen the giant since he disappeared, but I know where he is, I know which vicinity. In the opposite direction, I look out behind me basically, and I pull the binders up. There's some really nice sunny faces and fingers running down, tussocky fingers, and a real big head basin in behind that. So I thought, I may as well just have a quick look at that while I'm having a little break here. And quickly I spot a stag. There's a stag bedded on a finger, just in the sun, like fully sleeping. Put the camera on him and everything. Like, he looks decent, but he doesn't look like, in my mind, I'm going for the giant. So this guy, he was cool to see, put it that way, but I wasn't going to target him. So I think, I'll check him out later if I need to, So I start heading up after the giant, heading up the leading spur, and it's pretty easy going to start, but then it starts getting steeper and steeper and steeper, and I end up having to climb up through the scrub, the West Coast scrub. If you know what that is, or if you don't know what that is, it's like thick, gnarly, tangled scrub, and it's pretty hard going at times, and it's basically vertical. Being real careful with the path I'm taking and making sure I'm safe, but I end up climbing up through this face and getting up onto the ridge again, and then following this nice ridge. It's like a real razorback ridge, drops away on both sides of me. I'm looking down into a new valley out to my left, and out to my right I'm looking into the valley that I'm camping in. We'll just say my valley. So I'm walking along this ridge, and there's quite a bit of sign. You can see where the animals moved up and down there, stags and chamois and things like that. Now, actually, what I didn't mention is I saw some chamois this morning. Saw a couple of chamois sort of bedded in the sun, which was pretty cool. And but they're all on the side where the giant is, all on that side of the valley. So yeah, I'm walking along this ridge, and I get to the point, I'm like, man, I don't know if, I'm nearly at the top. I'm nearly at the very top where I need to be, where it starts flattening out and basically in the zone where the giant is. But just in between me and that is a very steep face and a saddle and another very steep face, and I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get up there, because I'm looking at it and it is rocks, it's bluffy, and there's no obvious path to take. So I'm thinking, crap, am I even going to be able to go any further? I get right up to the base of this first bluff system, and there's no going further. That's it. I can't go any further up there. So what I do is I drop down to my right off the ridge, and I sidle through the face, and I'm going all right. It's steep, it's gnarly, but it's not too bad. And I get to a point where I come to like a dead end, and there's a little tussock bench, probably like a foot wide, and it runs from where I'm standing to the other side of these bluffs. Above it is bluffs and below it is bluffs. And I thought, man, that's my only path, but that is, if I slip, I'm dead. Not a safe path at all. It's marginal. It's too dangerous to pass. Like, I looked at it, I was like, you could do it, but if the consequences are massive. If it didn't go to plan, you wouldn't be making it out of there alive. So I wasn't going any further. It's just far too dangerous to try and even attempt. So I thought that's it. I can't make it up there. I can't get up there. I'm nearly at the very top. Like, I'm literally 100 metres from the top, or maybe 150 metres from the very top. And once I was up there, I'd be fine. I'd be in the zone where the giant is. But I can't get past this last bit. So what I ended up having to do is slowly make my way back down to the saddle, and I thought, there must be another approach. There must be another way to get up to where the giant is. As I made my way back down, I'm like looking across the valley, like around the face from me, and all these ridges are gnarly. Like, they're all sketchy looking ridges, and I'm thinking, can I even get up there? I thought that the path I was taking was going to be the easy one. Turns out you couldn't do it. So I'm looking at all these other ones, and I'm thinking, I don't even know if I'm going to get up those ones. I think at this stage it's like early afternoon, and I decide, the cloud is starting to push up the valley and get closer, and I'm actually getting surrounded by quite a bit of cloud. So I'm thinking, right up the top there where the giant is, it is completely clagged in, and it's completely clouded over. So maybe let's go and have a look at this other stag that's bedded up on the opposite side of the valley in the sun. He's still there. Like, I put the binos on him, he's still sitting there. So I thought, let's do that. We know we can get there. I know I can see him because there's no cloud. Let's go. So I ranged him from where I was sitting, and he was 650, around about that, 654 I think to be exact. And then I ranged the next ridge back, and that was 447 or something. So I thought, if I can get to that ridge, he's going to be close. He's going to be pretty close. If he's a big dog, I could set up, I could shoot from that far. That's what, 200 meters or something. So I thought, let's go. So I boost up there, I get right up onto him. Didn't take me too long to cover that 450 odd meters, and I end up getting to the base of these rocks that were right on that ridge line that looks across to him. I put my pack down, I get everything prepped, and then I take the big camera and I crawl up to the apex of the ridge where I could look down at him. And I'm looking through the tussock. I had taken a photo on my phone way back to show where he was in relation to landmarks around him. So there was a couple of scree slips. There's 3 of them actually. 2 running one above the other, and then at the bottom there was one on an angle. So he was directly in line with the bottom of the lowest scree slip. So I knew that by my reference photo on my phone. So I found that scree slip, and I'm looking through the tussock and just trying to conceal because I am on the top of a ridge. I don't want him to see me peeking over that ridge, so I'm looking through the grasses. And then eventually I spot him, and he's exactly where we left him, where we originally saw him. He's still there, sleeping in the sun, happy as. So I set the camera up, start filming him, and I get a good look at him, and he looks old. He's got a big wedge head, he's got a big saggy throat, he's got a solid big neck, and just looks like a big mature animal. Now antler wise, he's really long, he's got a real nice shape, like quite round. He had 3 on his left top, 2 on his right top, brow bay tray on his right, brow tray on his left. So he was a big 10 pointer. And I thought, man, he's a nice stag. He's a good looking stag. He's big enough, he's old enough, but he doesn't get me that excited because I know what is up on the top of the hill opposite him. If I hadn't seen the giant, I'd say this stag would have been something that would have got me excited. But I didn't want to shoot him because I didn't want to take any chances at ruining the stalk on the giant, and I knew that if I shot him, I'd be, in the back of my mind, I'd be like, I'm happy with him, but there's a massive one there, So for me, in that situation, I chose not to shoot him. He was 198 meters, he was close, and I just watched him. I thought, man, this is cool to see a nice big stag like that. And just doing his thing, man. No idea I'm there, and I'm perched up there in my sniper spot, just watching him. So I thought, okay, this could be interesting. We're in a really nice head basin. There's some nice faces below that I can't quite see. They run down into the bush, and there's a really good face opposite me, and then also back behind me where the giant is. I can see all that country. So I thought, I'm going to sit here, and we're going to sit here till evening and see what sort of fires up on the evening. Hopefully this guy gets up, starts roaring, and then hopefully we have stags answering him, and I might see some stags coming out of the bush, out of the forest below me. So I thought, this is probably a good spot. I can see a lot from here. I know where there's a big dominant stag that he's going to roar. He's potentially one of the stags that were roaring when I had 4 stags roaring, So I just thought this could be a good evening sit. So I got all prepped, chucked on my puffer jacket, I got all comfortable. Mum just sitting there waiting, glassing around, looking for other things. And the cloud starts turning up. It starts coming in hot. And next thing you know, I'm fully clagged in. I cannot see a single thing at all. So I sit there thinking, maybe I'll just wait it out. Hopefully it's going to pass. It did not pass. It did not pass at all. I ended up having to pack up. It's getting later in the evening now. And I thought, well, visibility is 40 meters at max. I'll slowly make my way back to camp before it gets dark. And, not that I can see far ahead of me, but at least I can see something, So I'm walking along this ridge, and it was a real weird feeling, like this walking along this steep ridge, the one that I was watching the stag on. I just carried on up the ridge. I'm walking on top of the ridge. So if it was a clear day, he would have seen me plain as day. But because the visibility is so limited, I could just walk wherever I wanted, follow the easiest path. And there was a lot of deer sign. There was a lot of tracks, a lot of prints all through this ridge in the mud. And obviously a lot of activity walks up and down there. A lot of animals moving up and down. So it was pretty cool to see. And it was a weird feeling though. I had the GoPro on my head, recording as I'm walking, and it was just so weird, man. Like, you don't know what was around you. I can't explain it, but it was just a weird feeling walking in that mist in the low cloud. And I got to the top of the ridge, and it's some nice country, some real nice country. And there's actually a couple of really good valleys over the top of this, which I want to check out at some point, which I haven't been into yet. So I get up there, and I know camp's down one of these spurs that comes off the top. And luckily I had it marked on Gaia on my phone, so I was keeping an eye on where camp was, but ended up starting to head down one of the spurs, and it was not the right spur, so I cut across to the next one, which was the right one, and I followed that down, and then eventually I could see my tent through the cloud. Just got in there, and it was actually starting to, the wind was up now, and there was a bit of rain coming through, so I did get back to camp at the right time. I opened up the sheltered side door, I cooked up a meal and chilled out basically. It was still daylight, but it wasn't very bright, still couldn't see anything, but I just thought I'll keep my boots on and everything like that just in case it clears just before dark. I might be able to have a little look around, but as it was, nothing. So right through till dark, the cloud hung around. Yeah, I just called it a night, man. I just finished my meal, went to sleep, and throughout the night I started hearing the stags pipe up again. I woke up to, I could hear the giant just bellowing like big growly roars across the valley, you know, like he was like I was used to hearing from him. And I thought he'd come back down, obviously lower. He was sort of my height now by the sounds. And I checked my phone and it was 2 o'clock. So he'd woken me up, that's how loud it was. Still across the valley. But yeah, I thought, man, this is cool. He's come back down lower. This is going to be good for the morning. So the morning comes around. I get up, 6 o'clock I set my alarm for. I get up, get out of my tent. It's still dark, but I'm preparing all my stuff and getting things ready. And then as it starts to get light, I realise that I cannot see anything. And the cloud was still very thick. So I was gutted, man. I was absolutely gutted because I had a pretty good morning plan. I could hear the giant roaring. There was another stag roaring down the valley, and it sounded like there was a third stag up the valley as well. So there was roaring going on, but the visibility is no better. I can hardly see anything, you know. It's that thick. So I sit there with my boots on, all my gear ready to go. I end up cooking up a coffee and some breakfast, and I'm having that while I'm waiting. Ooh, there's a big roar. Good roar then. Did you hear that? Probably not. I'll boost the volume on that, and you might be able to hear it. That was pretty loud. Yeah, so I'm waiting, and it doesn't clear. And the thing is, there's no point in me even going anywhere because I can't see. Even if I drop low elevation, I still won't see anything because I'm so high up in this head basin. So literally, I've just got to wait. I'm at the mercy of the clouds, really. And as it turns out, the clouds just never lifted. So that's where we are at the moment, man. I'm sitting here in my tent doing this podcast because I got all this time to burn, listening to stags roaring, and I've got thick cloud everywhere. Oh, there he is. He's roaring again. So the time right now is 10:22. It's not late in the day. Stags are roaring, but I just need to wait for that cloud to lift. So I thought I'd catch you guys up on how this hunt's going so far. I mean, we're pretty early on in the hunt. Day number 4, I believe, is it? And if this cloud lifts today and these stags keep roaring, I think I'm going to be in for a pretty good chance of finding something this afternoon. So hopefully I've got some good news in the next installment of this. I don't know if this podcast will just finish here and then you'll hear the next one. The next episode will be carrying on from here, or if I'm going to tack it on to this. But either way, in the next few days I'll do another installment and I'll carry on from this point here. So thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you on the next one, eh? Wish me luck. Okay, welcome back. It's been a couple of days since the last installment, guys, but a lot has happened. It's been very good. Okay, where do I start? In my notes, I recorded the last piece of podcast in my tent while I had the cloud around me and a bit of rain and all that sort of stuff. So off memory, it started to clear and I packed all my stuff and I started heading above camp and I got onto this long leading ridge. Unfortunately, the cloud did not lift. While I was walking along, I couldn't see at the max 100 meters, but most of the time it was probably 50 in front of me, and I thought, options now, what can I do? Because I didn't want to sit in my tent all day. So my options were slowly walk this ridge in the fog and just roar down all the sides, down all the head basins and things like that. Hopefully, eventually, I'll come across a stag that's bedded not too far away and he'll respond to me. And then from there, I'll be able to make a game plan, you know, whether I try to get him to come in or whether I try to sneak into him. I wasn't too sure, but it's quite funny. This day was like hopefully going to be a saviour. I remember when I was doing that podcast, like it was starting to clear and I was like getting all excited that I was going to have a good hunt. But once I'm into it, it was actually worse than pretty much all the days. It was the thickest fog and everything. So as I'm roaring my way down this ridge, I noticed that the wind had just backed right off. And when there's no wind and there's low cloud, I know what it's going to be like for the rest of the day, because the wind obviously pushes the cloud around. If there's no wind, it just sits there. And it was sitting there, and that's what I was doing. It was sitting there. So I think I probably spent 20 minutes, half an hour, just walking down this ridge real carefully, real quietly, and then roaring as I went, roaring as I got to each little vantage point or each little head basin. And eventually, guys, I got a response. Started off as a pretty quiet moan, and then he roared again not too long after that, and it was a bit more worked up. And then he actually started, at this point I started filming, and I set my gear down, got everything ready. I even got the rifle out and stuff, because at the time he was getting more worked up, and as his roars went on, he started growling, he started grunting, he started just full on roaring, like proper roars. And I thought, I wonder if this guy's going to come in. He was obviously bedded down at the start, but it sounded like he got up towards the end there. But obviously I can't see him. He's probably within 300 metres of me. Sounds like he was sort of across the valley from me. But I mean, I've had stags come in from long distance before, so there was always that possibility. So I ended up sitting there. I'd roar at him every now and again, but I'd try and sort of keep a little bit like cryptic for him, so that he was trying to figure out what was going on. He was the one that was doing most of the roaring, trying to find where I was. And he got quiet for a while, and I thought that he was dropping down into the creek below me, and I thought that he was going to come, up the face that I was on and just all of a sudden just pop out right in front of me. And so while he's gone quiet, I'm sort of sitting there, looking as best as I can see in the fog, which wasn't very good. But I was just scanning for any bit of movement, listening for any sounds or hopefully a closer roar or something. But before anything happened, all of a sudden these two keas come flying around above me, and then one of them landed on my pack. So my pack's sitting down about a metre from me. I've got the rifle in front of me, I've got the big camera on the tripod to the left of me, and next thing you know, this key is standing on my pack a metre from me, and I turn around, I'm just like, what the heck? He's just looking at me, happy as, sitting there, not afraid of me whatsoever. So I start filming, and you'll see in the episode, he was pretty like inquisitive, like, what the heck is this? And he was like looking at me, and I went to put my arm out. I went to put my hand out first, and I thought, man, if he bites it, he'll probably bite my finger off. So I put my forearm to him, and just to see what he'd do. I was wondering if he'd even hop on it, or you never know. So I did that, and I was slowly creeping it forward to him, and eventually he got up and flew a few metres and landed next to his mate. So the two of them are standing there right next to me and all my gear. I've got potentially a stag coming in, and they're making all sorts of noise. They're making a racket, they're hopping over to me, and they're biting my rifle scabbard, they're biting my pack, my trekking poles. They're just being nuisances, but it's freaking funny. And then one of them even came really close to me and hopped onto my boot, and then walked up my leg and was standing on my leg trying to chew the Huntec label off my gaiters. Can you believe that? These are wild keas. A kea is a mountain parrot. They're wild birds, big parrots, incredibly intelligent. I got one trying to bite the Huntec label off my gaiter on my leg, which was cracking me up inside. I filmed that too, you'll see that in the video. So these guys hung around me for ages, and then eventually the stag started roaring again, and he was in the same spot. So I was actually a little bit gutted, because this whole time I thought he was coming in, but unfortunately he was not. So I ended up carrying on, and I gave him heaps of time. I was probably sitting there for a couple of hours, but after a while I ended up carrying on and roaring, the rest of the way down the ridge, but ultimately nothing else, no other sign. There's a few fresh prints around, so there'd been animals moving through the night. I've got a coffee too, by the way. I'm just going to be sipping on a coffee to keep hydrated while I'm chatting to you. So yeah, sort of moral of the story, I ended up circling my way back to camp, and the cloud was still thick as anything. The whole day was sort of a bit of a miss, apart from that action with the roaring stag and the Kia action. There's nothing else much going on. So that night, as I shut up my tent and decided, I'll go to sleep now, I sort of was keeping an eye outside, and the cloud was starting to lift. And then all of a sudden, the moon started shining through the tent. And I remember peeking out, and it's super clear skies. In the moonlight, I can see across the valley, and it looked amazing. The stags started to roar in the valley. I had 4 stags roaring. The two, which I'll say are the the usual suspects, the two that are across the valley from me, one being the giant, the other being the stag I've never seen up till this point. So they were roaring like crazy. Big, grunty, throaty roars, like proper dominant roars. And then there was a couple of other stags that were just roaring, just standard roars. So that was really cool to listen to. They actually kept me up quite a lot through the night. I remember waking up 10 o'clock. I woke up at 2 o'clock and woke up to them just roaring, just big, grunty roars. So that was very exciting. I had high hopes for the morning. So I had my alarm set for, I think it was 5:45 a.m. And I woke up, peeked outside, and it was clear. Finally clear. I could see in the moonlight. It was still super clear. So I got some water boiling in the MSR and had a coffee and breakfast before the sun was coming up, and listening to the stag still roaring, man. So how cool is that? But as the sun started to, it wasn't creeping over the mountain, but it was starting to light the skyline up. The stags went quiet, and I'm sort of packing all my gear and getting everything sort of organised and stuff. And what I'm thinking at this point is they've been roaring all night, and now that the daylight's starting to creep in, it's getting light enough to see now. It's still dark, but light enough to see. Yeah, they must be all bedding down and going to sleep because they've been up all night. So, yeah, I had a fair idea where a couple of them were, just from, I was sort of pinpointing the directions of the roars early on. So I set up my chair and I got the spotting scope out and the binos, and I started to just scan these two spots. Eventually, I saw a hind. I could just see her back right across in the tussock, higher than my camp, so high elevation. And I was watching her and I was looking around her thinking there's got to be one of the stags there. And I saw him. I saw a stag coming up the spur, just feeding. And I could sort of make out antlers with the binos. So I put the spotting scope on him, and he was a monster, an absolute monster. He bedded down and he was on an angle where I could see his antler configuration. And guess who it was? It was the giant. And where he is now, he is a long way from where I saw him, but still walkable for a deer, obviously, but he's not where I last saw him. What I think happened is when I first saw him on the top of the hill that I couldn't quite get to, top of the mountain, when I last saw him, he had a hind and well, let's say two hinds. He had two hinds, potentially one of them was a yearling or a fawn, but he might have finished with them, and there was another stag roaring down the valley, going quite well. He would have been listening to that. I think they were roaring backwards and forth to each other. But then all of a sudden, he is down where that stag was roaring from. So what I think may have happened is he'd sort of finished with his hinds up the top there, and he'd made his way down to where this other stag had been roaring, potentially, beaten up this other stag, chased him away, and claimed all his hinds. So now he's sitting there, and he's on a high spur that's just starting to catch a bit of sunlight. He's just bedded there, happy as. So I'm sort of thinking, okay, he's actually approachable. Basically a camp pack down, or I could leave this base camp here and just take another tent and some gear down and set up like a spike camp in the bottom of the valley. Because where it was a long way from here. To do that in a day and come back the same day back to camp would be, you'd just be wrecked. It would be a late night mission. So I was thinking I was going to have to do a spike camp. And just as I'm starting to make a plan and looking at the ridges and the ridge systems, how am I going to get up there? There's a belt of forest down the bottom, and then that runs into real nasty tight scrub, and then it breaks out into tussock. So there'll be a couple of hours of me bashing my way up through the forest from the valley floor, and then pushing out through the scrub and eventually getting into the tussock. But from the tussock, I could approach where he was. There was a bench, sort of the next ridge over from where he was. It ran down and it benched out into a nice bench system. And I thought if I could get to there, where he is bedded right now would be 300 metres. There's a pretty high chance he's not going to be bedded there by the time I get there, but he could still be within that face. His hinds were there. So I thought, there's a chance there. If I can just get to those plateaus, those benches, I might be able to set up and be within rifle range of him. So I'm starting to get my gear ready. I'm starting to get this plan underway. And then in the distance, I hear a plane coming. It's a scenic plane, a small plane, like a little Cessna or something. And it's flying lower than they normally fly. And obviously the sun sort of broken the mountaintops now. So it's still early morning, but it'll be a really nice morning to be up in the air. Not a breath of wind. Yeah, this plane's flying up the valley. And it's low enough that it's quite loud, and he's not sort of flying directly over the opposite ridge to me, so not too far from the stag. And I'm thinking, I hope this plane isn't going to come right up here and get close to us, and hopefully, I hope he doesn't spook out these deer and push them into the bush. And I was thinking, nah, they normally know the difference between planes and helicopters. Helicopters, instantly they're gone for the bush normally. But planes, I've watched these deer, like even on this trip and previous trips, planes, they'll often just watch and they know they're safe. They can hear the difference in the sound. So I was hoping that was the case. But as this plane got closer and closer, I realised he's low, like he's pretty low. And I thought, man, this isn't good. So I pulled the binos up and I looked at the stag, and he was standing up at this point. He was looking into the air, and then he started just sprinting down the ridge he's on. And then I'm sort of thinking, crap. So I sort of get in position, sit down, and then get a good steady view of him. And he's got 8 hinds, I think there was 8, and they're all barreling down the mountain at full sprint. I'm thinking this is the worst case scenario right now. So they're running down. Well, no, actually I shouldn't say that, because I was also thinking, well, they're coming lower down, so it means I don't have to climb as high. But where they're going to go is that's the next issue. So I was watching them. They cut down through this face. They probably dropped 400 meters elevation. I lost sight of them as they went through the scrub, and then they popped out on a scree slip, which is like a big rubble face, like rock face. So they were running down the scree slip, and at the bottom of the scree slip was this nasty, gnarly, gorgy creek. Big boulders, steep sides, and just scrub and bush everywhere. And they were heading for that. So I was thinking, do not go in there. Please don't go in there. But they did. They went straight in there, man. I saw the hinds for a bit. They sort of calmed down, and they started feeding on the edge of this gorgy creek. I could see them up on the face above the creek. And the stag, he dropped into the creek, and I lost sight of him for ages. And then eventually I picked him up, and he was on the same face as them, but lower down, and he was just moving around, and sort of he ended up coming down and dropping into the creek, and then I lost sight of him from there. He went into the thick forest. From where I was, I couldn't see him. I didn't see him come back out again, so I sort of thought that he was right in that forest. And where the hinds were, they were just in the thick scrub, but they were the ones I could see. Remember, there was about 8 of them running down the face. I could only see like 2 of them. They were just in little patches of tussock in amongst the scrub. So I think the majority of the deer were hiding, So I'm thinking, this is not good. Can I get to where they are? He started roaring from the forest down there. I heard probably 3 or 4 roars over the space of 20 minutes. And I was weighing up my options, and I could get down there. I could do the original plan. I could, carry a spike camp system, drop down to the valley floor, go down the valley, and then start climbing up that nasty side creek that he's in. From where I was, it was fairly steep, and it was big and bouldery, and those creeks are not easy and not nice to go up. I try to avoid them because I find they're freaking, once you're in there, it's just a mission. But I thought I could probably still do it. It won't be fun, but I could probably do it. I could maybe make a spike camp down in the valley floor. There's a couple of reasonable clearings on the side of the main river, and then from there I'd go up this side creek and slowly make my way up to them. But the problem is, because we've got a weather change at the moment, it was blowing northwest for the previous duration of this trip. That's what brought all this low cloud. And now we've got the opposite. So the wind is now coming up the valley, and that's bringing all the clear weather. Because the wind is coming up the valley, when I start going up this nasty side creek that the stag and his hinds are in, probably, I don't know, it's maybe 500 meters, 600 meters from the valley floor to where they were up this side creek. But I mean, it doesn't sound far, but when you see the terrain and the country, it would take a couple of hours at least, probably more, to be honest. It's literally boulder climbing and nasty, real nasty stuff. So I thought if I did get to that point and I started heading up this side creek, my wind is probably 95% sure my wind is going to be going straight up to them, and that's going to blow my chances at seeing them anyway. So I'm kind of thinking that although he's down low, although I kind of know where he is, I can't see him, but I kind of know where he is, it's probably not worth me going. And I decided against the plan of going down there for all those reasons. I mean, the last thing I'd want to do is him wind me, because then I may never see him again. I mean, at least if I don't approach it and I stay, within distance where I can look down there, I might be able to pick him up again and see where he's moved into and see where he's found comfort again, and make another plan later on in the trip. So for the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm loading up all my hunting gear, and I'm going above camp. Now, above camp, I've only ever come down the ridge above camp when I, after seeing that 10-pointer, I came down in the fog and I dropped down on top of camp. That's the only time I've been above camp. So I thought I'll go up there, I'll go up the ridge above camp, get to the top, and there's a big valley that I have not looked into yet, and it's clear, so I'll be able to see, and it looks like really good country on the maps, and I'm sure there'll be some animals kicking around. I may end up finding a big stag up there. I may find that big 10-pointer again, you know. I mean, that stag's a nice stag, and I think the thing is that because I've seen the giant, any stag I see, I'm not going to be keen to shoot because I want to go for the giant, but I need to be realistic. At the moment, I'm not going to be able to approach the giant, so I can't pass up an opportunity that I normally would have taken, you know, if I hadn't seen the giant, if that makes sense. So I was thinking, if I see that big 10-pointer again and he's approachable, I reckon I'll probably have a go at him. So I'm heading up the ridge above camp. I get to the top and I just crest the top and I look into this big valley, and it's amazing, man. There's animal tracks in the scree, so you can see where the animals have been walking back and forth in the scree, getting from bush to bush. Down the bottom of the river, in the bottom of this valley, is thicker bush that comes up into patchy scrub and tussock. Like, looks really good for deer, looks really good chamois country. On the northeastern side of the valley is sort of bluffy rock faces, but tussocky, grassy sort of benches in between, like amazing habitat for chamois. I was thinking 100% I'm going to see a chamois up in here. Yeah, I'm slowly like picking my way along this ridge top. I'm glassing. I'm covering all of the country with the binos, thinking I'm going to see something, but in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking that the deer in the camp valley, you know, they didn't like the sound of the plane, so they ran for the bush line. So if there's anything in this one, there's a chance that they might have done that too. But I'm working along in the hopes of seeing something. You know, something might be starting to come back out and feed. It's been a while. It's been a couple of hours since the plane, maybe 3 hours since the plane even. So things should have started to be calming down by now, you'd think. So yeah, the ridge I'm walking is a pretty rocky ridge, pretty steep on both sides, and scree running down on each side of me, but just the view is amazing. I can look both sides of it. I'm looking down into both head basins. Yeah, the country's amazing. I've got to see something is what I'm thinking. So I end up walking this ridge for probably, I don't know, I might have done a kilometre maybe, walking this ridge just glassing. Once I get to each high point, I sit down, take my pack off, get comfortable, and I just glass for half an hour to an hour and then move on to the next one. And then eventually I catch, in the sunlight, on a nice little plateau bench, I catch a big red stag, bedded down, big stag, big body, huge big neck on him, just a real awesome looking stag, and he's bedded down in the sun on this nice flat bench in amongst all these big boulders. And I'm thinking, crap, here we go. I'll get set up, get a proper good look at him. I pull the spotter out, get the spotting scope on him. Really good mature stag, one of the better looking stags I've seen body wise for a long time. Turns out to be our big old 10-pointer. So now I'm looking at him like, okay, I've already kind of passed you up once, you know, what am I going to do? And I was sort of thinking that any other hunt that I would have seen this stag, I would have taken him, you know. He was the sort of animal I like to hunt. Old, big, mature, and, you know, good antlers. So I thought, nah, let's do it. Let's see if I can get to that next little plateau down there without him spooking or seeing me or anything like that. I'll set up on him and we'll try to get him. So that was the plan. So this plateau in front of me, I think I ranged him. He was 400 meters, about 400, 398 or 397, I think he was. So I thought, if I can close the gap another 50 meters to get to around 350-ish, that would be good. I like that distance for filming. I don't like to be too far over that, because, you know, when you're filming, if you're too far away, it's just, what's the point? So I like to be 350 or under. I thought if I can get to this plateau, that should put me down to 350. I ranged him and I ranged the plateau, and yeah, it was about 50 meters difference. So I'm like sneaking down there, and the problem is I've got to go through, it's all open country, and, you know, there's no hiding. So the good thing is he's bedded down with his head on the ground facing away from me. So if I'm going to do this open country stalk, now's the time. So I'm like hurriedly moving my way through as quiet as possible, and eventually I get down to this plateau and I set up and I crawl to the edge and I put the binos on him, and he's still sleeping. He's moved a little bit. I think I forgot to mention he got up and he walked forward and came closer and then bedded down. Same thing, bedded down facing away, but he's still currently as I'm sitting there on this plateau, he's still bedded, sleeping, facing away. So I set the rifle up, I set the camera up, I get everything ready, I practice my firing sequence. I'm literally, the rifle, I've got a Backlens bipod on it, and the bipod's propping the front of the rifle up, and the rear of the stock is rested on a little hump in the mossy tussock, and basically the rifle's pointing, the crosshairs are resting on the stag without me touching the rifle. That's how perfect this rest was. So all these things were lining up, and I was thinking, man, it's like, it's almost like it's meant to be as far as this whole setup, this whole, experience. So where he is, I can approach him. He's in a head basin, basically on the same side as me, so I can walk around there easy. There's no nasty gorges and bluffs to deal with. Right now, I range him, and he's, I think, 347. So right now, bedded down, he's within range, and everything is ready. The cameras are ready, everything. So I've just got to wait for him to stand up. Because where he is, I'm not against taking a bedded shot with a rifle, especially my rifle, the 300 Win Mag, but where he was, there was a rock, a big boulder rock right in front of him with a small rock on top of it. You could put the bullet over top of that rock, but there was not a huge margin of error, and I couldn't see enough of his body. It's not worth the shot, in my opinion, to take. So I decided against shooting him bedded, and I thought, I'll wait for him to stand up. He'll get up, he'll have a feed, he'll have a stretch, and then he'll most likely bed back down again. This is early afternoon at this stage. So in reality, I've got a few hours of him just sitting in the sun, relaxing. That's what I was thinking. He'd just be bedded, because he would have been up all night roaring. He'll be pretty sleepy at this point. So I'm waiting. We've got more planes flying over too, by the way, and these ones are further away, and I watch him every time a plane comes over. He'd lift his head and he'd look straight up at it, and he'd watch it. You'd see him tracking it as it flew around, and then when it disappeared over the next mountain range or whatever, he'd put his head back down, go back to sleep. So he wasn't fussed as long as they stayed far away. Yeah, I think a couple of hours went by. I don't know. I should have actually taken note, but it was hours, and then eventually, I'm like looking around the valley, like, oh, I wonder if there's something else, because it's really good chamois country, and you'd think there's the chance of finding another stag or something. So I'm like looking around, scanning the area around just to see what's around, and then next thing you know, I look back and he's standing up. So I missed him stand up. I'm thinking, crap. So I flick the cameras on. Cameras are all rolling. I get behind the rifle. He's still in the same spot, but just stood up from where he was bedded, and he's perfectly broadside. He's standing there ever so perfectly. I get the crosshairs on him. I zoom the VX5 Leupold scope into 15 power, so I'm nice and tight on him, and he puts his head down, takes a couple of bites to eat, lifts his head back up, and I gently touch the trigger, and the recoil of the rifle kicked back, and I didn't get to see the impact. I cycled another round him real quick because I had no idea of the hit. The shot felt perfect, but I didn't see the impact. So at this stage, I'm not too sure what happened. I get the scope back on him, and he's actually on his feet, running, trotting in my direction at a reasonable pace, and he didn't look hit at all. And I'm thinking, did I miss him? Nah, I can't have missed him. And to be honest, I freaked out a little bit. I freaked out there for a second. And then eventually he stopped, and he got a bit wobbly, and then he toppled over. I grabbed the big camera, pan that round, get that on him. Yeah, he didn't go any further. He just dropped down and died right there. So relief, man. Relief on my point of view. I actually quickly looked back on the footage, and it was a perfect shot. Just that scope lifted up, the rifle kicked back, because I wasn't holding on to it tight. I just had the rifle basically sitting there, and I just touched the trigger off, so it kicked back. But what I didn't see is that the bullet went straight where it needed to go. Perfect shot. So I'm stoked. I'm absolutely stoked. I can see him. I quickly pack up all my gear, and I start making my way down there, and it's like a maze down in the boulders. I'm like going through all these boulders. I picked out a big boulder that I knew he was just above, so I'm heading for this big boulder, and eventually I could see antlers poking up in the tussock and stuff, and I was stoked. I'm like, yeah, here we go. He's 40 meters up there. So I get up there and have a look at him, and I was shocked, man. I was absolutely shocked. He was huge. Biggest body stag I've ever hunted. Just an absolute tank. Huge stag. Massive, massive neck on him. Big body. Just way bigger than I thought he was going to be. I knew he was a big, old, dominant stag, but his body size was just a whole nother level on what I thought it was going to be. So I was thinking there's no ground shrinkage on this guy. It's like he grew. So yeah, I was mind blown, man. It was crazy. Oh yeah, I sort of propped him up, got him behind him, and had a good look, and big antlers, 10 points. He's missing a bay on his left and missing a front royal on his right, and yeah, he sort of had pretty underdeveloped fronts, like his brow on his left and his brow and his bay on his right. They were pretty short and they were quite stubby. Normally when I see that would indicate a young animal, but he was very old. His coronets are hard down, like a real old animal. So I was wondering if he potentially might have been going backwards. Not sure. I'm not sure, to be honest, but yeah, just not much going on in the fronts, and definitely looked like they had been bigger in his life. Just, I don't know, it's just a hard thing to explain, but just the way they looked, the way they were shaped, and the way they developed, it looks like they were kind of going backwards. So yeah, but never to mind, man. I'm stoked. Like, I'm 100% happy. Stoked over the moon. Big long beams, big width, like a real nice shape to him, and just an absolute tank, man. And just an absolute perfect hunt, perfect scenario, perfect spot, perfect valley, perfect stag, and a perfect shot. So you can't ask for anything else. So that was a pretty cool evening, man. I ended up spending a bit of time there, and took some really cool photos and stuff, and finished the video off. So you'll have to check the video out. There's no doubt it's on YouTube right now, because if you listen to this podcast, it means that the video would have gone out about the same time. So I ended up sorting out the stag. It took me right through till dark, but as the sun went behind the clouds, you know, clouds were coming up the valley, the moon came up over the other side, and yeah, the walk back with the stag was in the moonlight, man. It was pretty cool. It was a heavy pack. I was feeling it, man. I was absolutely destroyed by the time I got back to camp. It was quite late, but I walked back in the moonlight, which is pretty cool. I think I was talking to, I think it was me and Jack Russell talking about this, because we've actually done a few of these together. The moonlight walks, man, there's something special about walking back in the moonlight. Quite often, I mean, we've carried bull tar out in the moonlight, stags, Jack's stag that we got together last year, we carried that out in the moonlight back to camp, and I don't know, man, it's just like something about those moonlight hikes when the full moon's up and it's bright enough, you don't have to use your torches. I don't know, it's a cool feeling, man. It's something that it's probably some of my strongest good hunting memories is within the moonlight. Even back when I was chasing wild boars with the dogs, man, like moonlight hunting was my thing. I'd spend a lot of time in the moon chasing around boars and stuff. But anyway, so last night was a full moon. Well, not a full moon, but it was bright enough, and it was an ethereal walk back, if that's the right word placement. But it was magical, man. It was absolutely magical. So I got back to camp. I sort of unpacked all my gear, got settled down, and had some dinner. I sent out a couple of in-reach messages to Catherine and Gerald as well, and yeah, had a good sleep, man. Had a real good sleep. I was absolutely hammered, tired. I set my alarm for 6:30, and then this morning when it went off, I just stayed in bed. So the plan from now, man, is I've still got a heap of food. I've still got enough supplies to last another, I don't know, even 10 days. Yeah, I might just close one of these doors slightly in my tent. That wind's starting to push in from that side. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not. But yeah, by the way, I'm sitting in my tent with a cup of coffee, and I'm just looking down the valley, and it's perfect skies. I can only see a few clouds, but all of a sudden we've just had a little bit of a wind come down the valley from behind me, and it's pushing through the tent. My tent's completely open. I've got stuff drying everywhere outside. I've got solar panel out, the BioLite 100-watt solar panel, the BioLite base charge, you know, that one that was in my West Coast Raw videos. So I've got that charging. That's actually currently charging 2 power banks, so 2 20,000 milliamp power banks, and the solar panel's keeping it at 100% charge. So how cool is that? I'm charging 2 20,000 milliamp power banks, the BioLite ones. The base charge is not depleting in its power supply because the solar panel's keeping it at 100%. So yeah, between that and the food, I can do another 10 days up here in the mountains, and I'm really interested to have a crack at trying to get this giant stag that's across the valley. I don't think I can get to him from where I am now, and I don't think it's possible for me to relocate on foot. So I think it's Sunday today. On Tuesday, Scott is due to pick me up and pull me out of the mountains, but I've just reached him, and I've just told him my plan and said, how does that work with you? Instead of picking me up, can you relocate me to the other side of the valley to a dividing ridge, and I'm going to set up another base camp there and potentially do another 7 or 10 days up in there, with the main goal at trying to get the giant and also I spied, looked like a pretty decent chamois buck across there on the very top ridge. So if I can try and get the giant stag, but then also keep an eye out for a big chamois buck, that's kind of the plan, man. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. So in a couple of days' time, I might be jumping in a helicopter, flying a couple of kilometers, landing on another ridge and setting up another camp for another 10 days, another week or so. But yeah, I think it's exciting to think about. It'll be another couple of episodes for you guys to watch, and of course I'll revisit the podcast. We'll probably finish this one here and then carry on once I've sort of set up and had a couple of days up there. And then yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy me documenting the behind the scenes of this hunt. But I don't know what I'm going to find. I don't know if I'm going to relocate the giant. I don't know if I'm going to find the giant, but I'm going to have a really good go at it, because if I get him, he'll be the biggest stag I've ever hunted in my life. You know, biggest free range stag, biggest public land stag. He's an absolute monster, man. So if I can get him, I'll be stoked. That's definitely going to be a target. And then you never know what else we'll see up there, man. We might see another big stag that takes my fancy. Scott will take a bit of gear back with him. He'll take the stag and stuff like that we've already got, and some gear. Yeah, we'll be ready to do another big trip. So we've got good window coming up, bit of rain here and there, but I mean, it's fine. So I think it's a good option, guys, and I'm pretty excited about it. So this 7-day trip that we're currently on is going to pretty quickly turn into a real big trip, I think. I was joking to Scott. I said I want to do another well, I wasn't joking, but I said to him I want to do another 20 days hunting before I head home, and I sort of thought maybe 2 10-day stints. I mean, this will be 7 days by the time I get shifted, and then if I do another 7 days or 10 days, you know, I'm getting pretty close to that 20 days in the mountains. My last hunt was a long hunt as well, so I actually quite like these long hunts. It's a bit less pressure on me to, you know, just go and shoot random stuff, and I can sort of hold off for something that I'm really excited about, and it hopefully comes across into video. I'm not just shooting something for the sake of making a video. I'm shooting, you know, I'm targeting these animals that actually get me personally pumped, personally excited. So yeah, we'll see what happens, man. I think stage number 2, part 2 of this big trip. So we'll wrap this podcast up there, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Yeah, I think you can comment here. I think in Spotify especially, there's a comment section. Let me know what you think, man. What don't you like? What do you like? I need to hear about it, so I can refine these podcasts and make them better. Because as you know, I'm literally just winging it. I'm sitting in the tent just trying to recap the experience of what's actually happening. No notes, if minimal notes, and I'm just trying to cover it all as it's happened. The raw, the real side of it, which I don't know, should be pretty exciting. But yeah, so the next podcast, guys, we'll be carrying on from here. I'll probably be a few days deep into the relocation, the new hunt, and I'll literally be across the valley. I can see where I want to land on the maps. I've got a little posse that I've been eyeing up, and there's a couple of tarns nearby, so I have a water source nearby. I'll be slightly higher elevation than I am now, but it should open up some really good opportunities to get down into the giants territory, and also you might find something else, man. So tune in next time. We'll catch you then, eh? Thanks for listening.